If anybody ever steals my boat, they need to look for the red dots if they go fishing in it. Be like, if it's a red dot, you're going to catch fish.
Right. They're going to be upset that you don't have a hot foot.
I know. I can't reach the pedal.
So that's the problem. A hunter can't drive my boat because I have a hot foot.
I have to use a net and push it to load it on the trailer.
Let's do this.
Well, no, I've done it. Have I not?
I don't mind.
Oh, I did it on somebody's. Use the net and give it gas to run it up and load it on the trailer.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm short. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 7 of the Hunter Fishes podcast. So excited to have my good buddy here with me, John Carroll, a.k.a. Mongo Fishing.
Yes, sir.
What's up, John?
How are you, Hunter?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You say this is your first one.
This is.
But you've had lots of YouTube. You've been in front of the public eye a little bit.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
So we're going to dive in just right off the bat. We know each other from fishing.
Yep.
Have fished together many, many times over the years. When did you, this is fishing podcast, we got to talk fishing a little bit. Okay. When did you start fishing, bass fishing?
You talking about like as a child, or are you talking like tournaments? Tournaments. I started, so I was actually bored one day in 2017, looking through YouTube, and I found the old FLW Arkansas TV shows that used to be on. I don't think they were filmed anymore. But anyway, I saw those FLW Arkansas shows, and I watched 2 seasons, and then I decided I wanted to try this BFL thing and fish as a co. And so in 2018, that was my first attempt at a tournament, was fishing as a co-angler in the BFLs.
So the first time I remember, I'm sure I talked to you before that, but the first time I really remember, you had a hook somewhere in your head.
Yes.
And you came to weigh in with a hook just like buried in your face.
Yeah, so that was I think 2019. I was fishing Lake Ouachita. I was running my old low boat at the time, and I had this spot that was pretty good for jerkbait fish, and I was throwing a jerkbait, and I don't remember why, but for some reason I was using a different reel than I normally use, and I just didn't bother redialing it in, and I sent this jerkbait a little far and ended up in a bush, and so I was trying to shake it out, and when I released, it went straight into my face. And so the very first thing you have to do when you have a hook in your face is see how deep it is. So I took a selfie and saw that it was buried completely, and so then I ran over. I knew that I couldn't get it out myself, so I pulled up some random dude, and I was like, hey, can you get this hook out of my face? And he's like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And I was like, all right. So then I drove my boat to another dude. There's actually 2 guys. And the one guy says, man, we always come across the weird stuff when we're fishing. And I mean, not exactly, he used some other words, but we always come across the weird stuff when we're fishing. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, last time we were out here, we came across a guy who was shot. And I said, how do you come across a dude shot while fishing? And he's like, well, I mean, it's technically on the way home, but still. And I'm like, I want to party with you guys. But yeah, so he took the hook out of my off the bait, but he couldn't get it out of my face. So I just left the hook in my face and fished the rest of the tournament with a piece of tape over the hook, and then had it removed at the ER that night.
Everybody was like, who's the really tall, crazy dude that has a hook taped in his face?
Yeah, and then the next day I fished the Mr. Bass, and then with the hook is removed, obviously, but it was a little swollen, but I'd forget about it, and I'd go to, it was cold, so I go to rub my face, warm my face up, and immediately remember that I had a hook in my face the day before, and it's all of a sudden painful again. So yeah, good times.
Yeah, that was one of the first memories that I remember of you, and everybody was like, this dude's nuts. Why does he have a hook? Why is he still here?
Yeah,
he's just walking around like, hey, what's up? Having conversation.
It went in my face at I think it was 8:36 a.m. is when I took that selfie, and it came out at 8:30 p.m. that night at the ER.
Excuse me, sir. Do you know there's a hook in your head?
Yeah.
But, now, and then did you have your fancy jerseys then, or was that after that? That's the other thing everybody remembers. I want to say you had that jersey on.
No,
Did you not?
No, I was wearing one of those AFCO Reapers.
Oh yeah.
And I remember that because I was so afraid that the neck thing was going to get stuck on the hook, and then it'd be like stapled to my shirt the rest of the day. And that's why I had to make sure I put tape completely over the rest of the hooks that were sticking out.
So now I'm remembering we fished one day, and I hooked a gar. Speaking of hooks,
Yeah.
and John's like, "Here, I'll get it unhooked." So you reach down there, and the gar shakes, and it hooks your hand, and now you're tied to the gar.
Yes.
And then you're like, "Oh no!" And you reach to get it with your other hand, and he shakes again, and now you have both hands
Yes.
around the gar, hooked, bound together, and the gar's shaking, and you're saying
but
not
we need-
good words, and
we
I'm
need to
laughing.
go back to the original reason why I was so willing to take this hook out of the gar in the first place. It was a custom painted crankbait.
That
sir.
was.
It was. So I didn't want you to lose your
You
crankbait.
sacrificed.
Right. And you just and with me having both hooks in both thumbs, and then one pinky, and then also the other hook still in the gar.
And the gar wasn't happy.
Right.
And you're holding it out of the water, trying to get it to stop shaking. And I'm like,
And I'm stapled to it.
we finally get the gar loose. I'm like, "John, let me pull this out." And you're like, "I think I need to go to the hospital." I'm like, "Well," and then we spent like 15 minutes deciding if we were going to the hospital or if I was going to pull it out of your hand.
So yeah, it was like it was what'd you say? I said, can you do the line trick? And you said, well, I've only done it once. And I said, well, but you did it. You're batting 1,000. I said, we can try. And you said something like, well, but if I can't get any better. It can only go downhill. And I was like, yeah, but if you still mess up, you're still batting, 500, and that'll put you in the Hall of Fame. So let's try it. But because it was my right hand, so I had to use my left hand, which I'm right-handed, so I had to use my left hand to get the hook off of the bait, because you couldn't use the split ring pliers.
Right.
And that was a challenge in itself, just trying to use opposite hand to get the hook out of my hand or get the bait. And then we finally get everything done, and he puts the hook back on and catches a couple more bass. I don't think I caught anything else the rest of the day.
No, but that hook caught more fish.
Yeah. It was tainted.
And I felt so bad laughing, but
flavored.
I had to because it was very comical.
Oh, it was
watch
hysterical.
Because you were laughing and in pain.
Cussing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But it was a good time. I don't think you and I have had a bad time fishing yet.
No, but I don't think we had any more hooks other than I think that was the only hook incident.
Probably, but probably not. But it's the one I could think of. That one was pretty brutal. Stapled to a gar, all over a custom painted Bandit.
Yes, that I don't have now. I'm sure.
Yeah, you probably
I'm sure I lost it the next time I fished.
You probably lost it in a gar.
Yeah, that I didn't grab a hold of.
Yeah, good times. But you mentioned the jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't follow me on the socials or anything, or haven't seen me, I have a little bit of a sense of humor, and so my jersey, instead of looking like a billboard, I'm put a tie on there, because you got to dress for success.
It's still a normal jersey like you see me and everybody else wear.
Yeah,
but it has
looks
a tie.
like a suit and tie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fancy guy.
Yes, dress for success.
And you always say when we fish together, we look like a. What do you say?
I say that typically. So yeah, because you're what? How tall?
I'm 3 feet. How tall are you?
I am 6'6". So you and I either look like a decimal point next to a 1, or it looks like we were bed fishing one time on Table Rock, and the looks as people went by us were hysterical. Like it was like, I don't know if they thought that maybe Hunter was standing in the rod box, or if they thought that I was standing on something and he was kneeling, or whatever. But you'd see boats kind of like do these double and triple takes. Like, what is going on with these two? So I love fishing with them.
You just fish over me. Like, I don't even know you're there. You just throw over my head. I never know what's even going on.
Yeah. It's a good time, though.
Well, so you start tournament fishing in 17. But
18,
you fished
18.
18. But
Yeah.
you fished forever.
I did.
Lived in Florida.
Yep.
Deep sea fished or salt.
Yeah. So
whatever you people in Florida call it.
so yeah, I lived in Florida off and on for I don't know, a long time. Probably 10 years, 12 years, and I didn't bass fish. I just didn't see a point in chasing a small little green fish when I could run the boat further and go catch big green fish, catch mahi mahi or wahoo or tuna or whatever. Like that became my thing. I quit freshwater fishing basically from 2018, or sorry, from 1998 until 2014. I freshwater fished just a handful of times.
What was the biggest fish you ever caught in the salt?
That's tough. I mean, because you catch big sharks and stuff, and I don't want to. Big sharks don't come in the boat. They get to the boat, cut the line. It is what it is. It's a little more dangerous than a gar. But I think my biggest, probably my most memorable is we were trolling in my 22-foot boat that I had out of Destin. We were like 40 miles out in the Gulf, and I had my buddy Jesse and my buddy Paulie and Jesse's son, and really nobody had any saltwater experience except for me. And so my thing that day was we were running like meat rods, stuff that you can put smaller baits, catch some smaller fish, get some small, dolphin, the fish, not the mammal, mahi mahi, or king mackerel or wahoo or something like that. We weren't fishing for big, pelagics, smaller pelagics. And so anyway, Paulie starts saying that there was a swordfish behind my boat. And I'm like, Paulie, there's not going to be a swordfish. Swordfish during the day are, thousands of feet deep. They're not 400 feet deep. But it didn't click in my mind that Paulie doesn't know the difference between a swordfish, a sailfish, and a marlin.
Neither do I,
Yeah,
for what's worth.
So it's like a largemouth, a spot, and a smallmouth. They're completely different species. Sure, they're bass, and in this case, sure, they're billfish, but they're completely different, And so they have different, I guess, requirements of where they live. You know what I mean? Different environments and so daytime swordfish, I wasn't thinking that it could be a marlin or a sail. And so anyway, it ended up hitting the left outrigger and then just dumped my rod. And I grabbed the rod because it happened to be my at bat. We do a little cycle of who's at bat per bite, per knockdown. So it was my at bat, and long story short, I had 30-pound stand-up gear, no belt, so stand up, so I'm not sitting in a chair, fighting the fish without a belt, and it being an 8.5-foot marlin from 8.5-foot blue marlin, measured from the fork in the tail to the lower jaw. So
wow.
It was a big marlin on 30-pound stand-up gear, and it took 10 miles and an hour and 40 minutes.
10 miles?
Yes. Chasing it 10 miles in the boat.
Oh, wow.
And an hour and 40 minutes to catch. But we got it.
See, I've caught a lot
and then you got to let it go because I didn't have a federal permit. So.
all that work just to let it go.
Yeah.
I've caught a lot of fish. Like, I feel like I've caught some big fish. Never once have I had to chase a fish. Ever have I had to be like, I need to chase that fish so I can catch it.
Right.
And you chased one for 10 miles.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean,
that's impressive.
Well, they're a little bigger than bass.
And then you brought, I know, I always catch very huge, nasty, rough fish. I feel like every time we fish, I catch a giant carp or gar or something.
Right.
So you had the fighting belt.
Yes.
And you brought it to me, and you're like, you need this in your boat because every time I go with you, you catch some monster fish, and you need a fighting belt.
That was a fact.
So Florida, this is a cool part, I think, of your story, and that I really enjoy listening to the stories of. What brought you to Florida originally? I may be wrong, but I think I know why you were in Florida originally.
Yeah, so I'm retired military. I originally went to Florida. I was stationed at Patrick Air Force Base and Kennedy Space Center. And at the time, my job was explosive ordnance disposal, which is the military's version of the bomb squad. And being stationed there, you're NASA's EOD team. So I was NASA's bomb squad basically.
Got to hang out with astronauts and.
Well, no, it's the, you know, it's we worked every launch, every shuttle, and then of course the Atlas, Delta, and Titan rockets also that put the satellites up in space. Worked all those launches. I didn't work every single one for that time frame that I was there, but I worked a vast majority. I guess if you would have planned it out, probably could have worked every single one, but no one thinks about that. Just think I worked here.
That was just a normal thing to being around the space shuttle, right?
Right. It wasn't that big of a deal. So yeah, I worked a bunch of launches, and then unfortunately the last launch I worked was the space shuttle Columbia that came apart over East Texas and West Louisiana in 2003. So that was the last shuttle launch that I was part of putting up, and then it came apart. So unfortunately I had that experience of doing the cleanup of the Columbia also. So
Gotcha.
Two totally unrelated things. I wasn't responsible for anything with it coming apart. Let's not get that twisted. But yeah, as bomb techs, we have to be there on scene during launch, and so that's why I was part of that launch.
And you served?
I did 25 years.
How many tours overseas?
7.
And you're the crazy guy that wants to go get a hold of a bomb and make it not blow up.
I mean, it's not crazy. It's just it's a calling.
You told me one time you're either right
or
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's no longer your problem. So
that's
what you got to look at.
Yeah, it's the calmness that it must take.
Yeah,
like I never thought about the research end of it, but you research everything. But it's because of your background, the research you had to do and the studying you had to do.
Yeah, so I nerd out on the dumbest things now, just because like you said, I wanted to know everything about everything. Because you can't be wrong.
Like a mayfly hatch.
Right.
Fishing.
So
you know everything there is to know about a mayfly hatch.
We turn this back to fishing, exactly. So Hunter and I had this discussion 2 years ago about mayfly hatches and fishing mayfly hatches. And then I found one on Lake Millwood in practice, and it turned into be something pretty good, but it died on me before the tournament. And so I researched as much as I possibly could about mayfly hatches, and I wanted to know the different species in Arkansas and how long their life cycle is and how long they're going to be out of the water and all this stuff so I can play it to my advantage. And then a week later, or maybe 2 weeks later, back on Millwood for the TBF, and I took 4th.
And so,
I was the only person fishing a mayfly hatch.
You're asking me questions. I'm like, John, I don't know the hatch. Brim eat them. Bass eat the brim, fishermen catch the bass, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
You're like, well, there's several species. I'm like, John, stop there. It's a mayfly. I don't know. And these questions, and you're like, well, I've been researching. Yes, obviously you have, because I have no idea at this point.
Right. I just have to, I don't know, I have to nerd out on stuff. If there's something that gets in my head, I need to know everything about it.
Did that come from the background of having to,
I think so.
The schooling?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's pretty intensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long school. It's like 9 months. And it's one of the toughest ones in the DoD, both physically and mentally.
Really?
So, but it's totally worth it.
You were able to, you may not be able to answer this. You're able to work with the Secret Service a little bit.
Yeah, so, with that job, we work with a bunch of federal agencies. You get a chance to work with the Secret Service, the ATF, the FBI, you name it, all sorts of different 3-letter agencies.
Really cool. I mean, neat opportunities that the normal person never even knows exist.
Right. Some of it's really cool.
Yeah.
But, some of it I can't
talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
That's why I think he's so cool, because people are like, I can't, if I tell you I have to kill you, and John's like, seriously, if I tell you I have to kill you,
No, I'm not like that. But it's just, there's some stuff I can talk about, and there's some stuff that I obviously can't, but not knowing everybody in the audience, it certainly makes me a little more shy about sharing
absolutely
who I've worked with. And I'll leave it at that. Or worked with, worked for.
Right. So recently, let's get back to recent.
Okay.
You went on a excursion. You've been out west.
Yes.
I actually, this first day I've seen you in roughly 6 months, 7 months probably.
It's been a minute.
Lots of hiking.
Yes, sir.
That's your new deal you're enjoying, is a lot of hiking. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I went out in September. I went out to Arizona to go visit a friend and to go skydive. And we were going to skydive over the Grand Canyon to remember a buddy of mine that's on my bracelet here, of my buddy Brian that was killed. And so we're going to go skydive at the Grand Canyon on Brian's death memorial, if you will, right? And it's Arizona, okay? And we were canceled due to rain, and so we went for a hike. And then the next day we were canceled due to rain, so we went for a hike. And so 4 days of rain, either where we were or where we were trying to go. But basically, we were shut down for 4 days. We couldn't do anything, so we just went hiking. Because what else are you going to do? You know what I mean? We're trying to just go skydive. So the 5th day, our last opportunity that we can go do this, call, check, and they said, "Yep, everything's good to go. You know, we're good for jumping." Sweet. So we're loading up the stuff back in the vehicle to drive over there, and they call and they said, "Never mind, the FAA shut the runway down, so you can't jump." So I just spent another day hiking or whatever. And ultimately what this did is, for the first time in a long time, the desert didn't feel like it was going to get me, right? I mean, having 7 combat deployments, the desert did not feel like a safe place for me. But all this hiking in Arizona, it's not the Mideast. It's, you know, it doesn't look the same. It looks different, but there are some areas that are very similar. But obviously there's no saguaro cactuses in Afghanistan. But some of the mountain areas look very, very similar. And so I'd go on these hikes, and it was kind of therapeutic to realize that no one's going to shoot at me. You know, that I can finally relax. And honestly, the thing that relaxed me the most was my friend that I was visiting, she had a Shih Tzu, and I would catch myself on these hikes, you know, like we'd stop, take a break, and I'd take a knee, or I'd start, you know, trying to set up some sort of security, and I'd pay attention to, you know, like who's walking up, and I'm like, dude, you're in Payson, Arizona, you know, and I have to teach myself and convince myself to relax again. Well, I asked her if I could walk her dog on the trail, and the reason for that is because out of every patrol I ever went on in anywhere in the world, I never once had a Shih Tzu. I mean, serious. Had there been a lab or a Belgian Malinois or something like that, and maybe I wouldn't have had that same sort of little comfort. But because you see those in war zones, but I never saw a Shih Tzu, and so I was like, let me walk Rocky, and you know, I'd feel him like tugging on me or whatever, and I'd look down like, yeah, well, you're totally in Arizona. So
safely in the U.S.
Yeah, and it really helped. So then I came back here, and it just, something was saying you need to go back to Arizona and hike more and just, I don't know, heal, if you will. So that's what I've been doing, hiking just as much as I can. And
that's a lot, in case people are wondering.
Yeah,
because you told me earlier.
Yeah, I don't want to get into all the numbers and stuff, but it was a lot.
Whole lot.
A whole lot. And part of the reason behind that is because I have a handicap placard, and it says that I'm not supposed to walk more than 100 yards. And I noticed there in Phoenix that I can't stop at the closest parking spot at Walmart and walk to the closest register without breaking that. And so if I can't go to Walmart without breaking my handicap placard, maybe I should just ignore that doctor and pay attention to my body and let it tell me when I need to stop. So that's what I did.
Awesome.
And that's what I'm doing.
That's what you're doing, yes.
Yeah.
That we were actually talking about different places you could go hike.
Yeah.
We could, you know, because I'm such a hiker that I know all the trails.
Right. No, you got one leg up on me. So this is the type of, good Lord, John, I just washed my tongue. I can't do a thing with it. So this is the type of sense of humor that Hunter and I have when we're talking together, and it's gotten us in a little bit of trouble on TikTok, because we were going fishing, and we stopped to get gas, and so we had discussed this what I was going to say, but apparently some of the viewers didn't like it or whatever, because I'm pumping gas in Hunter's vehicle, and I said, man, the cost of gas is getting expensive. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And then we pan over to Hunter, and he's like, really, dude? So, do you remember that TikTok?
Oh, yeah.
Because there was somebody who was like, that's not funny. He took it too far, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like...
Do you remember the dude that randomly walked up to me during that? And I got his business card, and I went and did motivational speaking for his business from there. Like, we're in the middle of filming that, and he's like, hello, can I talk to you? I'd like to talk to you for a minute.
It's too awesome, man. I remember that. That was funny.
And then we did another TikTok because, I don't know, we wanted to do dumb TikToks. But we did another one that was like, I had a crankbait. And it was just a normal bass catching crankbait. And John's like, we should talk about the crankbait with you holding it, and then you hand it to me. And when you hand it to me, I'll have a bigger version of the same crankbait. No, it's the other way. John talks about the little crankbait. He hands it to me, it's bigger. I'm like, that would be funny. And I'm thinking, a little bit bigger. He brings like a deep sea version, and I'm able to match it like to the T. I've got the same crankbait, it's 2 inches long, and his is like 8. And so we do, and I like tossed him this giant crankbait when he grabs it's little bitty, and then he tosses it back to me, and I've got it with both hands.
Yeah.
That's that's kind of stuff we do. We should have been catching fish, but instead we're floating down the White River making videos.
Right. Oh, we made some fishing TikToks. We did that one on when I caught that bass on what tournament did we do together? The river one.
River Rumble.
Yeah, Rumble in the river. Remember I caught that big one?
ABTT. Yeah.
Yeah, because I caught that big one, and we were like arguing. You're like, I think it's a grinnell. And Hunter's like, it's a bass, and I'm like, it's a grinnell. He's like, it's a bass. And I'm the one who's 6'6", and I can't see it apparently, but he's 3 foot and he can see it perfectly fine.
I'm like, John, that's like a $5,000 fish.
He's like, it's
get it in the boat.
I'm like, it's a grinnell. He's like, it's a bass. Had good times, man.
Yes, lots of. And you know what's crazy? You've got about 1,500 subscribers on YouTube.
I've got 30.
Oh,
I've got 3,000. I don't know, 3,300, something like that.
My bad.
It's okay.
But it's not like you have hundreds of thousands. I had the win last fall, got a lot of publicity, but I have more people come up and go, I watched you with that Mongo guy fishing so and so. I have more people talk about you and the videos they've seen me on your stuff with.
Oh, that's crazy.
Than anything else. I have people I'll be across the country. But hey, you fish with that really tall dude, don't you? Y'all were in some clean water catching them on a jig. I'm like, yeah, I remember filming that.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, and we were just fishing.
Right.
And you'd put it on your channel,
Right.
So it's lots of folks watching the Mongo.
Well, I make videos, or I've made videos for the Monster Bass channel, and I've had you on the Monster Bass channel. I made a video because you and I fished. What lake was that? What lake was it? You and I fished. We were throwing chatterbaits all day. Nimrod. Yeah. So this is the coolest story ever. So we're fishing, and he's catching fish, and I don't think I've caught anything yet. And Stephen Browning pulls up, and Hunter and Stephen were talking because you had just got done doing Eufaula or something like that for the MPFL, and so he was congratulating you on your check or whatever it was, something like that.
Right. I don't remember, but yeah,
and then
to that extent.
Yeah. And then Stephen Browning leaves, and Hunter and I pull into where he was, and I catch a 5-pounder on a chatterbait, and Hunter's like, dude, you just caught a 5-pound bass behind Stephen Browning on a chatterbait. And
look at you go.
I'm like, yeah, and that's something that'll never happen again. Ever.
That right there just tells you claim to fame.
Yep, and that's my one thing. But yeah, it was a good time.
So let's talk only because this was brought up beforehand. I forgot about it. Let's talk random hobbies. What
Yeah.
random hobby have you had, John?
Um.
Because it really is intriguing.
Well, so yeah, I used to grow live coral, grow and sell live coral.
Welcome to Arkansas. We didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so I used to grow quite a bit of it here, and actually, um, back when you could sell it easily on Facebook, before Facebook started regulating it. These were all coral that were grown here in the U.S. None of this was imported illegally. None of that stuff. This is stuff that I had grown myself, that had been aquacultured. So it means that it had come from someone else, grown here in the U.S. So again, I'm not importing. I'm not doing damage to the environment. If anything, I think it's helping because it's allowing people to grow coral here and experience it themselves, and it's not hurting natural reefs, right? So anyway, I used to grow and sell a lot of coral. There's a club here in Arkansas called the Razorback Reef Marine Aquarium Society. I was the club president there for a couple of years, and then
The club president of the Coral Club.
yeah. So yeah, there's it was yeah, we were the largest aquarium club in the state, so fresh or saltwater at the time.
This is wild to me.
Yeah,
Like,
but that was pre-COVID. So COVID shut down the opportunities for, because the club, we'd do monthly meetings, and people would like trade stuff, trade corals back and forth. The club would buy coral. We'd be able to split that and share it so people can grow it more and blah 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 blah. Again, that was pre-COVID, and then I think I quit as the club president probably in 2019.
all that bass fishing got in the way.
It really did. And then, I had a bunch of coral in my house. I was out on the boat one day, and Jennifer called me and said that my lights had fallen in my tank. And so they somehow fell out of the roof and crashed into my 125-gallon tank and cost me about 10 grand in livestock. So,
Golly. So that stuff's fairly lucrative.
yes, it can be. But just like anything else, it's not something you can just jump into.
Right.
I'd been in the saltwater hobby for years and years and years. So, yeah.
You have any other weird hobbies I don't know about?
Not that I can think of.
I
What do you consider weird?
I was hoping you were going to be like, yeah, also, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anything else.
Enjoy bird watching. I like to.
Lately,
count cardinals.
Lately, there's been a lot of photography, a lot of flowers actually.
Really?
Yeah, because I've been hiking in the desert, and spring in the desert is gorgeous because everything is starting to bloom. So, yeah, I did a lot of hiking and taking pictures of just random flowers because I could. You got to find beauty in the small things, man.
That's right.
Sometimes it's a little crankbait.
Sometimes it's a little crankbait.
It's true. It's never a Ned rig though. Those things are ugly.
Oh. So, let's talk fishing a little more.
Okay.
I think everybody that knows me knows I love throwing a finesse jig.
Yes.
You hate throwing a jig, period. But
unless it's a swim jig.
Unless it's a swim jig. But I've tried to change your mind on that through the years.
Yes. And you've been pretty successful. Because it's I know a jig is something that catches fish everywhere because a crawdad lives in every body of water in North America. If it's a natural body of water, it has crawdads.
That's another one of those research topics that you were sending me stuff on.
It really is. Arkansas has 60 species alone.
Can you name them?
50. No. Bob, Fred. No, seriously. No, maybe it was 56. I don't remember. I haven't done my research on it in a minute. I've been hiking. I haven't thrown a jig. But anyway, so, yeah, I know that a jig works everywhere because there's a crawdad everywhere. There's not going to be shad in every lake. There's not going to be herring in every lake. There's going to be a crawdad in every lake or stream.
That's right.
So,
and a jig can resemble a shad or a brim or a crawfish.
It can, but it's most of the time it's a little creature crawling across the bottom, a little crawdad. That's why most of them are little crawdad trailers. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm just not a fan of throwing them, even though I know they work great. But you were able to convince me, especially with the finesse jig. You still can't get me to throw a Ned rig, but it's not going to happen. But yeah, you got me throwing jigs, and that got me. It kind of put a challenge in me that I have to just throw this until I get used to it, until I like it. And then I kind of did the same thing with the swim jig, and that's because I saw put on Flanagan Fife, who put on a freaking clinic on Dardanelle one day with a swim jig, and I was on the back of the boat just watching in awe all day long. I couldn't even tell you how many fish he caught, but he caught a ridiculous amount of fish with a swim jig, and I was like, I need to learn this better because he's just putting on this clinic. And so I did a lot of that, and I got better with the swim jig, and then now I feel more confident with that. I feel more confident with the regular jig.
And it went farther than that with the swim jig. Our buddy Danny
at
Brazzalo.
Yeah, so I asked Danny to create a custom color for me one year, and he created it, and then he posted it on Insta, I think it was, and people were like, I'd like to buy that, and he's like, sorry, it's a custom color. And then when I was down at the TBF National Semifinals on Millwood, I called Danny and left a voice message, or maybe I sent him a message, but either way, I left a complaint, complaining that his black and blue swim jig is catching too many fish because I can't shake them off. I wasn't able to shake fish off in practice because they just kept choking it, so I left a complaint that it works too well. And so he called me back. He's like, dude, that's the funniest complaint I've ever heard. And then he's like, but while I have you on the phone, can I sell this swim jig? That the custom color I made for you? And I was like, well, I don't know. We discussed it a little bit and the name and all that fun stuff. And I was like, yeah, dude, do it. If people want to buy that color, then they can, let them buy it. So that's kind of how that came about.
And it's named
Mongo's Minnow.
After the one and only Mongo.
Fishing, yeah. And Mongo that was my call sign way back in the day when I was a bomb tech. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't actually know where that was from.
Yep, that's where it came from.
I thought it was just because you were so tall.
That's where it came from.
Yeah.
There's more to it, but we won't discuss that on here.
So you went from the guy that can't throw or wouldn't throw a jig to having your own signature colored swim jig.
Yes. Yeah.
And catching all the fish on the jig.
Not all of them, far from it. But yeah, no, you taught me a lot. It certainly boosted my confidence in it. It's I can't thank you enough for that, that's for sure.
Man, hey. I'm just fishing, man.
Right.
Hoping somebody learns something.
Right.
What is that your favorite technique now?
It's up there. I mean, if you give me an opportunity to fish a mayfly hatch, I'll do that year round. But
that's not really a technique, though.
Well, but that totally is a tech. There is a technique to fishing a mayfly hatch.
That's true.
Because if you guys haven't fished one, it's so mayflies. They'll come out in the millions, and they'll stack up in the trees directly above from where they hatched. And when they're hatching and when they first reach the surface, they're just a buffet for bluegill. And so you'll hear the bluegill snapping and popping and whatever. And then when they're doing that, the bass will start coming in and feeding on the bluegill. So the mayfly hatch technique, if you will, what I like to do is throw a frog into the tree and get it stuck. I'm not trying to throw it underneath the tree. I'm throwing it into the tree, and then I'm shaking my frog loose, which then knocks a bunch of mayflies on the water.
Did you do? I have to know.
And then I throw my frog in.
Did you screw up and throw it in the tree, and that's how this started, or did you do it on purpose?
No, I bumped the tree with the boat, and it just covered my power poles and engine in mayflies, and so they go everywhere. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of that. And then, as you try to, a person with my skipping abilities, as I attempt to skip under a tree, I'm guaranteed to get stuck in that tree at least a time or two, because I am not good at skipping. So it helps. It helps to suck at casting.
You're too tall to skip.
Yeah, that's what they tell me. But yeah, so you get it stuck in the tree and you shake it. All the mayflies fall in. Not all, but a big chunk of them. And then you your frog comes flying back at your face at like a Mach 1,000. You duck, reel it in, zip it back underneath the tree again while all those bluegill are still popping on those mayflies. Catch yourself a big bass.
Repeat.
Well, wash, rinse, repeat. You do it until you can't do it.
What's your favorite body of water? Fresh water.
That's tough. I don't know, man. I really like Greer's this time of year, but you couldn't pay me to fish Greer's in the summer because it just gets too ridiculous. So then I really like Hamilton too, though. I don't know if they're my favorites. But they're both fun. I really don't know what my favorite is.
Your favorite's wherever they're biting. That's where your favorite should be, wherever you can catch fish.
Yes. Which I've not caught a bass this year.
I know. What in the world? You even tried.
I know. I tried once. I tried a couple days ago. I caught a white bass.
Hopefully by the time this airs, you will have caught mini bass.
A bass fish.
Yeah, a bass fish. That's right.
As Eric calls them.
So, I guess the first time we fished together was during the pandemic.
Yes.
When everybody said don't
be
around anyone.
Yes.
And, there was a group of us that was like, hey, let's all fish tournaments, even though nobody's having tournaments.
Yes.
And we're scared that they're going to get on to us because we really didn't know what in the world was happening. So
we socially distanced on boats.
Put it together, but we said put in where you want. We're going to meet at a point. We're doing this only with people we know because we're not even going to see each other till weigh in, and cheating would be really terrible for, like a $150 prize. But
Cheating would be terrible for anything, but
yes.
But for real, this was perfect. This was the perfect tournament setup, in my opinion.
Yes, put in where you want, when you want. You don't even have to be there at daylight.
You just had to let people know you were coming.
Yeah,
you're
text me
for showing up and paying your entry fee,
and don't leave. If you're like, man, this is terrible, I'm going home. Find me and give me your $20 because that's all we were doing. Don't just leave. Either find me or come to the designated meeting point in the middle of the lake and give me your money, and we're going to weigh fish, and somebody's going to get all the money. Mm-hmm. And we did this every week during the week because, nobody worked. Nothing. Everybody was off to fish during the week. Yeah. So we did this, and the first one, I'd done a few, I think, but the first one I did with you is on the Mongo page, and we went to some secret squirrel stuff right off the bat, and I wouldn't let you film anything.
Right.
We caught a pretty good limit.
We start the video, we already have a limit.
Yes. I mean, whatever. But
that's important.
But we won.
Yes.
It went a long ways with the fish that I was not allowing you to film went a long ways towards winning. But regardless, we start the video. We had a lot of fun. First time we had fished together.
Oh, it was a blast, man. I was catching fish on jerkbaits. You were catching them on a Carolina rig. Because you caught a hybrid on a Carolina rig that day.
Yes, I remember that.
Because
I thought it was the world record smallmouth.
Yes. Because I caught a hybrid on a jerkbait just a few casts prior. Because I was thinking the same thing. I was so excited for this monster smallmouth.
And that was the deal. We were at Greer's Ferry. There's no hiding that really without going to North Arkansas. Nowhere else to catch smallmouth consistently in Arkansas, and that it was smallmouth only. There was some tournaments to fish on the weekends, but we were doing smallmouth only, so everybody had fun and just go catch as many smallmouth in best 5 as you can, and that's what we focused on.
Man, those tournaments helped me so much with that lake, because honestly, I never went to the lower end prior to that. I had no need to.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know the smallmouth. I didn't know why go. I mean, I still had that 17-foot aluminum, and it'd take me 45 minutes to go from takeoff to the dam. And so, we could put in anywhere, but I had never learned that lower end because why would I?
And it's changed since you've been home. It's changed. Smallmouth are playing a lot bigger role at Greer's now this year than I've ever seen. But there was no point in the tournament to go to the bottom. Right. Because most of the time, largemouth win, and they were on the upper end.
They had the 12-inch minimum for spots and smallies, and they had a 15-inch minimum on largemouth.
Right.
And so
5-keeper largemouth
wins.
Trumped every time.
Yep.
And so everybody stayed on the upper end, and that's why it's so much fun to catch smallmouth and something we don't get to do in Arkansas. We're having smallmouth only tournaments, so everybody gets to have fun, and nobody has to be faced with a choice to either win or have fun.
Right.
We're going to do both.
Right.
And do that was, I guess, 2020. This is the first year that those smallmouth have been on that same stuff really good.
That's
that I found them on
crazy.
that year. It's
That's
like
crazy.
we've made some checks off of them this year that I'm sure as it gets later they'll be on the same. But the earlier stuff, like the stuff I'm catching them on in March, I didn't know anything about it either. I never went to the lower end, and I spent a lot of time because I was going like it was the only place like there was nothing to do, but there wasn't a ton of income, so you couldn't just go travel.
Right.
So I was going to dam site is 45 minutes from my house, dam site at Greer to Heber Springs, dam site ramp. And I was going like 3 or 4 days a week. I mean, we didn't have kids yet, and I was just going to Greer's all the time.
Right.
And all I did was learn the lower end. And that stuff that when I finally clicked and how I caught them on that lower end early pre-spawn stuff has not, like the next year, 21 and 22, it's like, oh man, I'm fixing to wreck them. And I'll go practice for a tournament and not catch them at all. I'm like, man, what is the deal? So, but this year they're back. I think it's the high water because the last 2 years hadn't been just super high. But man, they're where they were 3 years ago.
Remember last year, Hunter and I did a little we're gonna fish for lunch derby, and on Greer's, and I was really confident that I was gonna do well. I think I caught one keeper all day, maybe, or no, I came in with 3, but 2 of them were Kentuckys.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It was so bad. I was like, this is horrible.
I love lunch derbies because even if I lose, I get to go eat lunch somewhere.
Yep, good times, man.
But
yeah,
yeah.
so the very first time we fished together, we won that little derby.
Yeah,
I had a good time.
not a lot of weight, just a great old Arkansas 10 or 11 pounds of smallmouth.
Right. And then we fished there a couple times since then with the same thing, like, hey, don't record this spot, but we can record that spot, sort of thing. I remember one time you made a cast and you caught like a 4-pounder, and you're like, I don't think I'm gonna want this on YouTube. And then like a couple casts later, he catches like a huge walleye on the same exact cast, and he's like, I don't want this on YouTube. I remember exactly where they're at. I was there the other day. I went there the other day.
When I first got a GoPro, I was like, man, time to grow the socials. I'm going to start recording everything. And I remember recording like several tournaments on the river and winning 2 or 3 of them. And then I get home and I start editing, and I'm like, I don't want that on there. I don't really want that spot on there. And I'm 3 days in and don't even have any fish catches that I want to show. And I'm like, well, there's no point in recording locally, I don't guess, because
Right.
I don't know. I mean, not everybody's out to get your spot, but some stuff is very spot specific, and I hate to just give it all
So
away.
especially if it's jig stuff, but like the way I look at it, like springtime, I like to throw crankbaits. I need to learn how to do it in a rig better because I keep getting beat with people throwing them, but I just don't like them. But I need to make myself do it. And so wintertime, when everybody else is out a rigging and jerkbait, and I'm throwing a crankbait, and it's cashed me some checks, and I see a lot more people in my stuff that I used to fish. But what they don't realize is why.
It's so hard to set it. Yeah, catch somebody else's fish is terrible.
Right. I mean, I can show you where I'm fishing and what I'm throwing. Doesn't mean you're going to catch those fish.
Right.
Doesn't mean you have why are the fish there that day?
It just means
That's the important part. The people that I don't have to give that part out.
Right, but the problem is when you roll up on something that's very distinguishable,
Right.
a dock, a building, something in the background, and you're like, I know where that's at. Then you roll up on it a day you need it for a tournament, and there's some goofball that doesn't know what's going on.
That's true.
That watched it, that's sitting on top of it. And you're like, man, I wish you'd get out of the way.
Right.
And he just ruins it all.
It's true.
And that's,
It is
I
a
don't
gamble.
know. There's a little bit, maybe I shouldn't be a secret. I love going out of state and filming. I'll show you everything. I'll show you anything you want to see. Just the stuff we got fish locally here every week. I hate showing everything.
Right. Now, I've thought about doing that too. Is just, hiding more stuff. But again, most of the time for me, it's all about why am I there in the first place?
Right.
If the person hasn't figured that out, then it doesn't really do them any good.
And when we started fishing together, it was something I really struggled with because I'd already had that moment where I was like, the GoPro doesn't go in the boat until I go to a lake I don't know.
Right.
And then yours is like strapped to your chest, and I'm like, oh no, he's going to record everything. But it hadn't been bad at all.
No, it's not
I'll
that
just
bad.
tell you, I'm like, hey, put that away.
Right. Yeah. But that's another reason why I enjoy like recording with you and fishing with you and all that stuff. Is like, I know we've had a blast on several places, and sometimes we can film where we're at, but we just can't film how we got there.
Right?
Because then it shows you how, where the place is.
Right.
And you'll understand. That one spot that you and I wrecked them on a little frog and a flipping bait.
Oh, yeah.
On that one specific tree.
Yeah.
And we caught our limit sitting in one spot.
Yeah.
We did that several times in that one spot.
That was so good that
and you can film it, show that all you want. No one's ever going to know how to get there.
No, there's 150,000 of those. That was White River. There's 150,000 of those on the White River.
Right.
I mean, it was just a specific one.
Yep.
That was good enough. I handed you my phone. It was like, video me catching a fish on a frog.
Yep.
That was good. What we catch, like 15 fish out of that thing?
Probably.
In one throw.
And broke a couple off flipping.
Yeah.
So it was a good time.
And I made like 2 or 3 checks off that tree after that. I'd run to it and pull up just 5 as fast as you can throw and leave.
I believe it too. I believe it. That was such a fun place.
We had a tree on the river that I don't know why, but for like 5 years, Brad and I,
right,
my partner, we man, it was awesome. And we'd just hide from everybody. We'd roll up and catch 5 and like win a tournament off of it in a Tuesday nighter and leave. And it hadn't been like that in 2 or 3 years, but it was such a, like if somebody was around, we'd never go to it.
Right.
And if there was a boat coming, we'd leave.
Right.
But man, it was so good. I don't know. I have no idea. There's 500 of them in Little Rock on the river, and
they just like that one.
Yeah, that one. And it was Brad. He was like, "We ought to hit that." I'm like, "Dude, we've hit 10 of those." He's like, "Let's hit that one." We called a limit the first time we hit it. Like won the tournament, I think, or right at it. It's like, man, that's a good one. I wonder if they'll be there again. And for like 5 years, they were there every time we pulled up and dropped trolling motor.
So that's one thing that I've started doing the last couple of years is every time I catch a fish, I save that spot on my fish finder. So Greers, for example, if I'm working on the bank in Greers and I catch a brown fish, I save a brown fish. If I catch a spot or a largemouth, I save a green fish. And then what I've started noticing is I'm starting to pick up patterns of stretches of bank that they're constantly sitting on that I may not remember.
Right.
But I can look and, hey, I've got 15 fish saved on this one small section, from all these different trips. Maybe I should fish that section. You know what I mean? Or like do the same thing on Hamilton, and you might see one dock with just start getting a bunch of pins on it. And I know there's always a fish on that dock.
Right.
Or whatever. So it's starting to help me. The only reason I did it is because we did the Anvil Jaw championship on Bull Shoals. Yeah, and I'd never been to Bull Shoals before. And to me, that lake just all looks the same. Mm-hmm. And what I was doing early in the morning during practices, I was running, spot to spot to spot, chasing shade lines, throwing a buzzbait and whopper plopper and stuff like that, primarily buzzbait. And again, marking when I catch, green fish and brown fish. And then come tournament time, I had an idea of which of these coves I wanted to run to and which ones I was just going to skip because they just weren't worth it. Because again, they all looked the same to me, and on a lake that I'd never been to before. And I was actually able to start patterning where I was picking up fish based on like channel swings and stuff, looking on my map later, going, this is...
I get it now.
Yeah, I see why they're here. And then I was able to run that on the second day, or just run that pattern, the channel swing pattern that I had picked up on, that I learned, if you will, by looking at all my marks.
See, the lakes I don't know, or the out-of-state lakes, I make very detailed because I don't remember. It all runs together. Like, I swear Grand Lake and Lake of the Ozarks could be the same lake. Like, I'll be thinking about it and be like, all right, I'm going to go here. And I'm like, man, I'm 250 miles from there.
Right.
But I'll have, like, a detail. It'll be like tree with whatever, stump. Or I'll have stuff like that because I learned the first year I started traveling, I had waypoints. And I was excited on year 2. I'm like, I'm going to go to this lake and I'm going to catch them because I had this stuff. And I get there and it's just a waypoint. I'm like, I don't even remember why did I waypoint that? So now I make notes on everything.
Well, I got that boat from Horizon, and it was an MLF boat, and it had, I didn't know this at the time, but it had, like when I come across a big stump that's going to, rip off my lower unit, I put a stop sign on my chart, and that way I know, don't go over there. Stop before you get to that spot. And so every time I see one of those big scary stumps on, like Dardanelle or something like that, someplace that, I put a stop sign. And And then I took my boat to, I don't remember where I went, someplace out of state. Oh, I went to Tennessee. You know what? I went to Tellico Loudon, where they just did the Classic. I went there. And I found all sorts of stop signs.
Really?
On my graph.
But did those mean stay away, or did those mean stop and catch a fish?
Who knows? They were not ones that I put there. And they were also pointless.
You know, I mark always.
But if you watch the Classic, you'd realize that lake is full of so much stuff that looks gorgeous that doesn't have any fish in it.
Right.
I mean, it's just literally everywhere you look is the ideal brush pile, or the, like, oh my gosh, this is a
Perfect.
rock transition with, you know, a single piece of isolated cover next to it, like, you know, on a point or what. Like, it's just, if you put everything together, there's going to be a fish. No, there's no fish there. No.
That's Watts Bar's not much better.
Yeah,
that's how I felt. I'm like, man, I've fished 273 miles of bank and I've caught 3 fish.
Yeah, Tellico Loudon was horrible.
But yeah, at Millwood one year, I always put a skull and crossbones if it's something I don't want to hit.
Mm-hmm.
That way I know. And I was marking them in and out of Mud Lake in practice in a tournament, and I had so many marked that my whole screen was just a skull and crossbones. So I was like, I don't think I did well, because there's just so many stumps. I was like, now I don't know what I'm doing, because everywhere I go there's a stump.
Right. So Millwood, I put the exit symbol on my graph wherever there's like, when, you know, because Millwood has those running lanes.
Oh yeah.
You know, so where the lane ends and you're exiting, I put an exit symbol there, because I also, you know, drive around and I leave trails, and so I try to follow my trail back, and at least I know if the trail is going towards an exit sign, that was my trail going out, and not some trail going to another random spot.
So you don't get lost.
Right. And then last year, I ran Millwood when the water was kind of down, and I slowed down at each one of the channel markers because they were still there. They hadn't blown away. Mm-hmm. And I marked a channel marker, or marked a spot, so that when they do blow away next year or whatever, because they're going to, again, they do all the time, at least I'll still have the channel markers marked where they're supposed to be.
Such a good idea.
Where the channel is supposed to be when the river's normal.
At Saginaw Bay last year, I ran a no wake zone during practice. Self-reported it, because the city gave us this map that was like, it was terrible. It looked like the key on a map. I mean, and it was a whole map for like a 30-mile stretch of river, and they're like, here's the map. Don't run no wake zones. You'll get tickets. And it'll be like, this bridge to this bridge you can run, then you idle the next 3 bridges, and you run halfway to this bridge, and then there's a buoy, and you idle 100 yards, and you run a mile, then you idle 2 miles. I mean, it was dumb. And one of the days of practice, I guess the first or second day of practice, I ran. I thought I got to a bridge and thought that was the end of my no wake, so I put it on pad and I ran quite a ways, and I passed a couple of other competitors, and they just looked at me like I was crazy. And then I got to the no wake buoy, which means I was leaving the no wake zone, and I shut down, and I'm like, oh gosh, I screwed up. And I called and self-reported, and he said, are you sure you ran a no wake? I said, I'm 100% positive that I've run a no wake. And I had a little penalty. I had to take off the last 2 of the 3 days. But whatever. It is what it is. It was my fault.
Right.
But from there, I marked. When I idled back out that day, I marked stop signs. No, it was maybe red dots and I don't know. I'd have to look at mine. But I marked the ending of every no wake zone very clearly on my graph, and I thought, I'll never use this again. And we're going back to Saginaw this year, and I'm so excited to go idle where I'm supposed to and run where I'm supposed to and not have to worry about it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the more you travel, the more you realize, you know, for years, I didn't mark anything. I still don't mark much around here. I remember a lot of it. But for years, it was just a waypoint. Like a brush pile, a bedding fish, anything was all the same waypoint. It was just a blue dot. And now there's so much more. If it's something that looks good, it may get a blue dot, but if I catch a fish, it gets a red dot. Or Truman, when I won last year, everything was marked with a tree for brush piles. But every time I caught a keeper out of it, practice or tournament, if it was a brush pile that I hadn't already caught a keeper out of, I changed it to a red dot instead of a brush pile. And then by day 3, you could look back and go, all these red dots are where the keepers came from. I need to concentrate more time on those brush piles.
Right.
You know, and it's, yeah, I'm I'm having to learn to be smart enough to where if I go back, I know what in the world I marked.
Yeah, so I did that on Millwood when I was doing that mayfly hatch thing. The better mayfly hatches, the ones that were consistent, I put a dollar sign on.
There
And
you
I
go.
knew those are money spots.
There you go.
And
Whatever
then,
you just, I
yep,
could look
I
at
was
yours
like-
and be lost, and you could look at mine and
Yep,
be lost.
I was like, that's a money spot. I got to put money on it. Otherwise, because if I just mark it as the same as the other mayfly hatches, I might lose my rotation. And so if I just put the money spots, I can go, yep, I can hit these others, in between or whatever. But this is where I need to go to start. This is what's going to give me my 5.
If anybody ever steals my boat, they need to look for the red dots if they go fishing in it. Be like, if it's a red dot, you're going to catch fish.
Right. They're going to be upset that you don't have a hot foot.
I know. I can't reach the pedal.
So that's the problem. A hunter can't drive my boat because I have a hot foot.
I have to use a net and push it to load it on the trailer.
Let's do this.
Well, no, I've done it. Have I not?
None of mine.
Oh, I did it on somebody's. Use the net and give it gas to run it up and load it on the trailer.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm short.
But I mean, but you see fish better than I do. You're a better bed fisherman, that's for sure.
Man, I know. We went to Table Rock, and I'm like, I'm going to teach you how to bed fish. And you're this tower of a man looking down, and you're like, I don't see it.
Right.
How do you not see it? It's right there.
On top of that, though, I get really bored really fast.
I know.
We went to Table Rock to specifically bed fish during COVID, and within 30 minutes, I'm throwing a jerkbait.
I know. You're like, go ahead and catch that fish. I'll be fishing.
Yeah. Yep. I caught several.
That's why I like forward facing live scope so much now, because it's like bed fishing all year. You're like,
Right.
I see a fish, I'm gonna catch that fish.
You had it, but you weren't experienced in it yet. Because remember when we were leaving one of the spots, and you're like, "Oh man, there's some crappie. I wish I could catch them." And
I
was
caught
like,
a smallmouth.
and I was like, "You have your forward facing, like try it." Remember you backed into a parking spot and you put your power poles down so that they wouldn't. You call them your engine protectors.
Oh yeah, so it
you
wouldn't bump
could
the
drift.
dock.
Yeah, you drift back and forth, and it would bump the dock and not your engine.
Yeah.
And which I thought was genius, also. But
Hey, when you tear stuff up a lot, you have to find ways to not tear stuff up.
right, that's yeah. You've showed me some impressive stuff with driving boats. That's for sure. You've shot through gaps that I didn't think were possible.
That was you with me at Dardanelle, wasn't it? When
It
I
was.
ran that,
Yeah, and I tried to film it, and it didn't come out.
you were probably shaking too much.
No, I was totally down for it. It just didn't come out very well. It when I turned off the camera, it corrupted all the files, so I lost that whole entire day.
That's one thing about John, man. With your background, I can't really scare you. You're like, bring it on. I've seen worse. Like, I think I'm going to run out of here. You're like, all right, I'll film.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so that came up in Vegas. I was at Sky Jump Las Vegas, which is like the 108th floor of the stratosphere, and you jump out, and it's you're on cable. You're not on bungee, so it just slows you down, right? You're only doing like 40 or 45 miles an hour. It's not free fall, but it's as I guess as fast as they'll let you fall. But you jump off the 108th floor of the stratosphere outside, and so like they got the little harnesses and all that stuff, and the lady's like, "You excited?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm excited." She's like, "You don't look excited." I'm like, "I disarmed bombs for 20 years. This is my excited. Like, you don't want to see me excited. Like, this is fine, lady. Let's just do this."
Man,
But
that's
yeah,
awesome.
You've asked me several times, like, "Hey, I'm gonna shoot across this. You okay with that?" I'm like, "Send it. Let's do this."
Sure. Can I hold 2 cameras?
Right. Yeah, it's been a blast. I've learned so much fishing with you.
Well, I've learned with you too. I have. It's funny, you go with somebody and they go with you and you still learn stuff,
Yeah, taught you everything you know.
That's right. That's right.
So the other day I'm on the phone with him. We have a mutual friend, and Steve was my team member last year. And
Yeah.
and we were. On
I
the
was
phone
going out of
with-
town and my 2 team.
Yeah.
I'm like, y'all just fish together.
So Steve was my team member last year, and I called the other day, and Hunter's fishing with Steve at the time, and Steve had just won a tournament like last week or whatever, and so I was like, "Hey, congratulations, Steve." All last year I told Steve that I'm only good for 2 fish per tournament. That's it. He's responsible for the other 3, and it didn't matter how many fish I caught that day. I'd still say, "Well, I'm only going to provide 2." And so even if I already caught 3 or whatever, I'm like, "Well, Steve, I'm still only responsible for 2. You got to call up this other one or whatever, right? And so Steve won last week or 2 weeks ago, and so I'm on the phone with Hunter, and he says, "Well, I thought Steve everything he knows."
You know.
Yeah.
Thank you, John, so much for coming on. Get to reminisce a little bit. Hopefully we get to fish soon.
Definitely. It's a lot more fun to reminisce with you than to reminisce with strangers. It just seems really weird. But, yeah, chatting with you is always a blast.
Well, tell everybody where they can find the Mongo.
All right, so YouTube, it's Mongo Fishing, Mongo. And then fishing, you guys should be able to spell that by now. And then, but I haven't put any content out in a long time because, again, I took a break. I took a break from fishing. I took a break from social media for the most part. I took a break from just everything so I could regroup and focus on myself for a while. And so there is more content coming on the Mongo Fishing channel. It's just, if you look right now, there hasn't been content in a while. And that's because I had to fix me.
And that's explained, actually, in one of those Mongo videos.
Yeah,
you talk about that.
I can't fix the world till I fix myself.
That's right. Also on socials, right?
Yes, Mongo Fishing on Insta and on the book faces. And then, of course, YouTube.
And TikTok.
Oh, yeah, and TikTok. I haven't made a TikTok in probably a year also.
No, we need to make another stupid TikTok.
Yes.
Thank y'all so much for tuning in to episode 7. Go find Mongo on his channels and check out Stick 5. And we will see y'all later.